Now, joining me is Paul Kengor, who knows all about President Obama's collectivism beliefs and is the author of the book, The Communist, Frank Marshall Davis, The Untold Story of Barack Obama's Mentor, which illustrates the radical influences on the president. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Andrew. How are you?
So we just did a whole monologue on collectivism, what it really means in the dictionary and the thesaurus, versus the president's view when he's speaking to audiences that it's all about helping one another and, doing right by your neighbor. That has nothing to do with political collectivism.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, your definition nailed it. It's about centralization of power in Washington, central planning. I mean, the communist economy, the textbook definition, if you take an Econ 101 course for communism, is central planning. I mean, that's really what it is. And I mean, there's more and more of government control within Washington, not government control at the local level, not at the state level, not at the level of a borough or a city or a township, but more and more in Washington. And the one thing that you know about progressives is that no matter what they want government to do to try to improve people's lives, or at least as they perceive it, the one thing that you can be sure of is that there's a progressive increase in the amount of power centralized in Washington. And that's something that they have in common with communism. Now, it doesn't make all progressives communists, but that is something that they share in common, and collectivism as well. I mean, that's part of it as well.
For the life of me, I can't understand why these people are attracted to such an ideology. We have seen it tried so many times, and millions of people have died because of communism, communist dictators, iconic, charismatic, cult of personality leaders, and yet progressives in this country keep telling us one more time, we'll get it right.
Yeah, what I think a big part of that is that they don't know these lessons of history. I mean, everything that you've been saying is dead on. It's absolutely right. I mean, I travel around the country. I'll get invitations from students at colleges. I teach at Grove City College, which is actually a conservative college. There's only about a dozen of them in the country. But I get invitations from students, college Republicans at this university, that university, and they'll ask me to come and give a talk called "Why is Communism Bad?" because they haven't heard that. And I'll go in there and I'll stand up there with a chalkboard behind me and I'll give statistics, the number of people killed. I'll hold up books. I have the Communist Manifesto right here. I actually bring this with me, and I find invariably a student will say, well, but the Communist Manifesto is really a pretty good book. I mean, it talks about love and sharing and the common good of mankind. If you just read the book, you'll see that Stalin and these other guys, they got it all wrong. I could tell right away, Andrew, that anybody who said that hasn't actually read the book. I mean, Marx says, kind of the signature statement in the Communist Manifesto, he says, the theory of the communists may be summed up in a single sentence: abolition of private property. That's a direct quote. The theory of the communists may be summed up in a single sentence: abolition of private property. And as Marx himself says, despotic roads will be necessary in order to achieve this vision. You're going to need tyranny. My 7-year-old daughter could tell you that when you try to abolish private property, you're going to have to kill people. You're going to have tyranny in order to do that. But the progressives, beginning in the 1920s, before that, the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. My last book was called Dupes. I talked about the idea of Potemkin progressives. You had these progressives: Margaret Sanger, H.G. Wells, George Bernard Shaw, Roger Baldwin of the ACLU, all these folks, Harry Ward of the ACLU. They would take these pilgrimages to Bolshevik Russia under Lenin and under Stalin, and they thought, maybe the Bolsheviks have this right. We're all sort of moving along in a common direction of centralization and collectivism. Maybe this is the utopia. Now, the amazing thing is, okay, maybe they got that wrong in the 20s and 30s, but how, after all of this, after everything that happened, we know about the purges, we know about the deaths under Stalin and Mao, how could they possibly still push ideas similar to this? And I think it's because they haven't actually read this stuff. They haven't learned the lessons of history. And frankly, Andrew, I would chalk most of this up to ignorance.